She was just cooking in the mess hall, until her SEAL team was captured and she fought back. The clatter of pans, the hiss of boiling water, and the sharp scent of onions sizzling in a hot skillet filled the air. The mess hall was alive, not with chatter, but with the rhythm of routine. Rachel Carter wiped her brow with the sleeve of her fatigues, humming softly as she stirred a pot of stew. She wasn't a SEAL, not a warrior trained for battle. She was a cook, the kind of person who made sure the men and women returning from grueling missions had something warm to eat, something that reminded them of home. Her station was simple: rows of pots, trays of bread, and spices she hoarded carefully, shipped from stateside by a grateful mother who knew her daughter's way of cooking was more than just feeding people. For Rachel, food was her weapon of kindness. She knew every face in that unit, every preference: who hated tomatoes, who loved extra garlic, who needed an extra helping because they burned calories like wildfire. But that morning, everything changed. The base had seemed calm. The team had returned from a recon patrol, exhausted, their uniforms dusty, their eyes heavy. Rachel had been waiting, ladling portions of steaming stew into bowls, teasing them about eating too fast. "Slow down," she laughed. "Food doesn't disappear that quick." They smiled, grateful. She wasn't just a cook to them, she was family. Then, without warning, the world exploded. A deafening blast rocked the mess hall. The windows shattered, and the walls shook violently. Rachel ducked, heart pounding, as smoke and dust filled the air. Voices shouted outside, foreign, harsh, aggressive. Gunfire rattled through the compound. Rachel's stomach dropped. An ambush. Before she could react, masked men stormed in, weapons raised. The SEALs, unarmed and still weary from patrol, were caught off guard. They fought, but the enemy overwhelmed them, striking with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, the entire team, her team, was bound and dragged out. Rachel hid behind the serving counter, trembling, clutching the ladle still in her hand like it was worth something. Her breath came fast, ragged, as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Her friends, her protectors, the ones she fed every day, they were being taken. The intruders never even looked her way. To them, she was just the cook. Unimportant, invisible. But Rachel knew something they didn't: invisibility could be power. She waited until the last boots stomped out, then crept from her hiding spot. Her body shook, but her eyes burned with determination. They were taking the SEALs somewhere, and she couldn't just sit in the rubble and wait. Not when the people who treated her like family were dragged off into the unknown. Her hands tightened around the knife she used for chopping vegetables. Not a rifle, not a sidearm, but steel nonetheless. Rachel followed the shadows, slipping through the broken corridors of the compound, past flames and smoke. The attackers were moving quickly, pushing the SEALs toward trucks waiting outside the gate. Every instinct screamed at her to hide. But then she saw Commander Hale. Tough, unshakable Hale, forced to his knees, his hands bound, his face bloodied. He had once told her her cornbread reminded him of home, of his grandmother's kitchen in Kentucky. He had smiled, soft in a way no battlefield could harden. Rachel couldn't let that memory be the last thing she held of him. She ducked into the storage closet, her mind racing. There, among bags of flour and cans of beans, she saw it, a crate marked, supplies. Not food, ammunition. The SEALs had stored backup gear close to the kitchen, hidden in plain sight. Her hands shook as she opened it. Grenades, knives, sidearms. She wasn't trained for this. But Danny, her brother, had been. He'd been Army, lost years ago in a firefight overseas. She remembered his words, whispered before his last deployment: "If it ever comes down to it, Rach, courage isn't about knowing how to fight. It's about standing up when no one else can." Asterisk. Rachel strapped on a vest that was too big for her, loaded a pistol with clumsy fingers, and took a steadying breath. She followed the captors out into the open, sticking to shadows, her heart slamming in her chest. She saw where they were taking the SEALs, toward the trucks at the far end of the compound. The engines were revving. In seconds, they'd be gone. Her throat tightened. It was now or never. Rachel pulled the pin on a flashbang grenade, something she had only seen in demonstrations, and hurled it toward the trucks. The explosion of light and sound tore through the air, stunning the captors. Chaos erupted. Rachel fired wildly at first, ducking behind barrels, but the surprise worked. The SEALs, trained warriors even when bound, seized the distraction. Hale surged to his feet, tackling a guard, wrestling his weapon free. Others followed, turning the tide. Rachel scrambled forward, knife in hand, slashing ropes that bound her team. Her arms shook, but she moved fast, adrenaline carrying her. One by one, the SEALs broke free, reclaiming weapons, fighting back with ferocity. "Rachel," Hale shouted in disbelief as he caught sight of her. "What the hell are you doing out here?" "Cooking," she gasped, slashing another rope. "But I'm not letting you go without a fight." Hale's eyes flashed with something more than shock, respect. Pure, unfiltered respect. The firefight raged, but with their weapons restored and their spirits ignited, the SEALs crushed their captors. The attackers fell back, retreating into the smoke, leaving behind their dead and their defeated. And when the dust finally cleared, the SEALs stood free. Bloodied, bruised, but alive. Rachel collapsed to her knees, trembling, the pistol slipping from her hands. She was shaking too hard to hold it. Her apron was torn, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. Commander Hale walked over slowly, disbelief etched into every line of his face. He removed his helmet, knelt in front of her, and looked at her not as a cook, not as a civilian, but as one of them. Without a word, he raised his hand to his brow and gave her a crisp, silent salute. Rachel's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes as she tried to process it. She had only ever wanted to keep them fed, to give them strength in small, quiet ways. She never thought she would stand in their fight, let alone be honored among them. The other SEALs, one by one, followed Hale's lead. Every man lifted his hand, saluting the woman who had saved them, not with firepower or training, but with courage, with love, with a heart too strong to let them be taken. Rachel pressed her hand to her chest, overwhelmed. In that moment, she didn't feel like just a cook. She felt like family, and in the silence that followed, with smoke curling into the sky and the compound still trembling from battle, the bond between them was sealed forever. She had fed them with kindness. She had fought for them with everything she had. And now, they would never forget her.